I watched Real Time with Bill Maher yesterday. This show was on American TV HBO on Friday the 27th. It's one of my favourite shows on television. Bill Maher is a extremely funny political satirist. He's also a very political animal, very liberal, and he is always encouraging guests to come on the show from all perspectives, and the content of the show is always provocative and always humorous, although there is a very serious side to the programme. So let's have a quick look at Friday's show then. It opened up with his monologue, and he reflected on the decision to start the impeachment process on President Trump in the week, following Trump's conversation, which has been whistleblown, his conversation with the Ukrainian president about the favour that he wanted the Ukrainian president to do in exchange for him releasing funds that Congress had agreed to help Ukraine in their fight against the Russian Empire. And this, of course, brought some jocularity from Bill and scepticism, but nevertheless was greeted with a win, so to speak. We then had Salmon Rushdie on, who's a regular participant in the show. He came on to discuss his new book, Impeachment, which is loosely based on an updated version of Don Quixote, and about a rather strange sort of mentally ill character who goes across America in the current time and comes across all series of very, very odd people. And in the conversation between the two, Rushdie described the book in relation to a sequence where he talks about how a pharmaceutical company employs extremely attractive women that they find in strip clubs and other entertainment venues, and they choose the most sexiest girls, train them up, and then they go out to the clinics to try and drum up business for the pharmaceutical drugs with the doctors, most of whom, of course, will be men. And it hinted that maybe there were certain favours that may well have been exchanged for a large order, and then that the malpractice on the part of the doctors would lead to rampant prescribing of opiate drugs to people who are basically not ill and are not really needing these types of very strong drugs. We then had, of course, the panel. Interestingly, we touched on climate change later on, when the Obama's environmental minister, Gina McCarthy, came on, and of course there have been lots of alarm bells about the environmental crisis recently, and Barney Frank was on. He made some comment about how he was now pleased that the impeachment process was underway, although he suggested it probably wasn't going to be in the Democrats' interest, but that it was so important now that it had to be done. And we had a member of the group of doubters on the panel, who still considers it unlikely that we are in a dangerous predicament with regard to the environmental crisis. Obviously, he hasn't taken a good look recently at the glaciers that are melting in Iceland and elsewhere, and he's clearly a member of Trump's right-hand team. We then move to the final part where Bill does his new rules, and he usually concludes with a quite a high-powered statement about what he believes should or shouldn't happen. And this time he focused on the issue that liberals are now falling over themselves with sorrow and apologies for what happened when racism was rampant in the United States. It's probably still as rampant now. And basically Bill was having a real go at white liberals who want the African American community to forgive them. And Bill was suggesting that if they really wanted to show their empathy, they should perhaps start to reparate to the members of the African community for all the slavery that existed in the country for many years. And that would be a good way of getting the African American community to view them as a decent sort of folk, rather than just talking at length about how sorrowful they all are. So anyway, that is a quick 6 minutes plus on Real Time with Bill Maher. You can catch it on YouTube, the whole show. I thoroughly recommend it to you. It's not on every week because he is a busy comedian, and he does shows, stand-up shows regularly. But anyway, that's my thoughts on Bill Maher, the Real Time with Bill Maher.